Kelly's is a story that I feel needs to be covered more. Um, she was a young girl who was a victim of extreme domestic violence at the hands of a man who was much older than her. And absolutely nothing was done to protect her or save her. And they had excuses at every turn for it. So we're going to listen to Kelly's story. This is Kellyanne Bates. And we're just going to understand who she is and what happened to her and why this is so horrible and why I heard about this case almost 6 years ago now and I still can't get it out of my head.
Was born on the 18th of May, 1978, in Hattersley, a small town in Tameside, which is 10 miles east of Manchester city centre. Her parents were Margaret and Tommy, and they were thrilled to be gifted with a beautiful child who would later.
I will say, I think that they're going to have visuals, but it's mostly them talking. So we're just going to be listening together. So you're not going to, if you're at home watching this on YouTube, not in the live, um, we're just gonna be watching this. We're just gonna be listening and looking at the photos. This is Kellyanne, by the way. And but yeah, you can just listen. You don't have to be as present as watching a video.
Grow into a confident and independent 14-year-old girl. Kelly was a kind and thoughtful teenager who had a strong relationship with both her mom and her dad, but the blissful family dynamic would soon fade away when Kelly began dating a boy in 1992. This relationship would not only drive Kelly away from her family, but it would also lead her into the void.
James Patterson Smith was an unemployed divorcee living in the Gorton area of Manchester. Described by acquaintances as house-proud and well-groomed, he was a teetotaler and non-smoker. His first marriage had ended in 1980, after 10 years, because he had been violent towards his wife. His next relationship was with a 20-year-old Tina Watson, whom between 1980 and 1982 used as a punching bag, even subjecting her to severe beatings while she was pregnant with his child. She said, at first it was now and again, just a little tap, but in the end it was every day. He would smack me in the face or hit me over the head with an ashtray. He would kick me in the legs or between the legs. Watson managed to escape from the relationship, during which Smith had also attempted to drown her while she was bathing. When that
I will say, and this becomes important later on, his escalation in behavior gets worse and worse and worse with each relationship. The violence level escalates, and they just mentioned him attempting to drown her. That is another thing that you're going to see prevalent through all the women that came out against him and everything that happened to them. It's going to line up with his pattern of escalation. So, as bad as it sounds now, it's going to get worse, unfortunately.
relationship had come to an end in 1982, Smith then started seeing 15-year-old Wendy Mottershead, whom he had also abused. In one attack, he held her underwater in the kitchen sink in an attempt to drown her.
The other thing is that they live in Manchester, or in the greater Manchester area, and he's dating a 15-year-old girl. Now, normally in a big city where things tend to be more progressive, though I'm not sure Manchester was that progressive at the time, I'm just doing comparison of 30 years ago compared to now. If somebody were to date a 15-year-old in a major city area, even in a not so major city area, I mean, I see people called out on Facebook for stuff like this with some frequency, and I live in a smaller area where this stuff tends to happen in ways where you can get away with it more frequently. But nowadays, I feel like there'd be a lot of visibility, a lot of call to attention here. This just wouldn't fly. But
That's what you would think, except that I see it all the time. I live in Kentucky. Okay, when I was 16, I was dating a 22-year-old with the full permission of my parents. Do I think that that was right? No, I don't think it was right. But I had full permission. My mom dated grown adults when she was a teenager. So she didn't see anything wrong with it. And it was just the way that this area is. We hear it all the time. Um, I'm really glad that that is a trend that is dying out because it is getting more and more disturbing as we go on. But it's all about the area, the dynamics, and because I lived in a rural area when I was dating an older man, and when I turned 18, I dated a man in his 40s. Okay, so and this was not seen as weird, which is strange to me thinking about it now because I'm 30 now, and that man was older than my mother, and we were dating. Just to put that in perspective, he was older than my mom. Okay. So, yeah, it was weird. But nobody really batted an eye at it because it was so normalized where I'm from. Not as something that I'm glad is dying out. It shouldn't be normal. It's weird as fuck.
Even back to the 80s, which wasn't that long ago culturally, somebody like this was able to get away with dating a 15-year-old. The other thing is Tina Watson. I couldn't find much on her, but I believe she did bring the child to term. She just got out of there, and
I couldn't find any info.
yeah,
I didn't really look deep, though.
I feel if she had lost the child, it would have been mentioned. So my assumption with her is that she got away from Smith and had the child and has full custody. That's
They say this, but we don't know, unfortunately, because there isn't a lot of information about this case or the people involved in it. All we really have is photos of Kelly too. There are no photos of the perpetrator, like almost none, other than I think like a police interrogation video and then photo, and that's about it. There's no video. It is very weird.
my
I would
assumption.
assume so. All the sources that I looked in didn't really get too deep into the other two women
Yeah,
that were abused.
and in general, there's not a ton of info here on the circumstances surrounding it. So just keep that in mind if you have questions that we don't answer. Some things I've dug a lot and haven't been able to get any answers for. So in 1993, Smith began grooming Kellyanne Bates when she was only 14 years old, having met her while she was babysitting for friends. Approximately 2 years later, when she had left school, Bates moved in with Smith. She was concealing the age difference between them from her parents, Tommy and Margaret Bates. Bates's mother said of her first meeting with Smith after the two had started living together, quote, "As soon as I saw Smith, the hairs on the back of my neck went up. I tried everything I could to get Kellyanne away from him." Kelly actually told her parents she was dating a boy called Dave Smith, whom her parents assumed was a boy from her school at first. However, her parents were shocked when they discovered that Dave was really a 32-year-old man.
Yeah, there's this mark on her head in this photo. That's a little interesting, isn't it? These are her parents, by the way. And I've heard this case done by several different people at this point, and apparently her parents, the reason that they didn't push to try to pull her away from this guy is that they were afraid it would push her right into his arms. But it doesn't matter because it still pushed her there, right? And she was 16 by the time that they found out about the relationship, even though it had been going on for 2 years. And so she was legally allowed to enter into a relationship like this because it was the legal age of consent. She, however, only lived with him part-time for a while until a blowout fight with her mother where she ended up moving in with him full-time. And at first, she was able to visit her parents a lot. That later changed. It got to the point where she wasn't allowed to contact them at all. And this up in the corner here, I'm gonna move my face. This is the man who did it. Okay, he's the one who did it. Him. And that's one of the only known photos of him, and I've seen it in color, and I've seen it like this. But yeah, it's basically all we have on him.
Furthermore, when her boyfriend became more possessive of Kellyanne, Margaret found out that Dave was really James Patterson Smith, and he was in fact 48 years old.
Although she had left Smith briefly because of arguments with him, she was once more living with him at Fernville Road by the end of November of 1995.
Something else to keep on your mind as we're going through this case and we're listening to it. They're in the UK, right? One of the staple things about UK housing is their what's called row housing, which is houses that are built right next to each other, right on top of each other, like duplex style. They're touching, they share walls, they share back fences, everything. That is what he lived in at the time of this crime. So as they go through the details about what happened to Kelly and what the last 4 to 5 weeks of her life was like, because she was tortured for 4 to 5 weeks. This was a continuous, nonstop thing for all those weeks. As they go over what happened to her, I just want you to keep in mind that his house is attached to multiple other homes. He was able to get away with this, almost like she was silent for the whole thing, torturing her and abusing her while having his home attached to another home. That is the level of insanity of this case.
Her parents noticed bruises on her, which she explained away as being the result of accidents. She became increasingly withdrawn and in December 1995 resigned from her part-time job. In March of 1996, her parents received cards purportedly from her for their anniversary and birthdays, but only Smith had written in them. When Bates' brother had tried to see her at her house, Smith said that she wasn't home. When a concerned neighbor asked to see her, she was briefly shown Kellyanne from an upstairs window in the home.
On April 16, 1996, Smith reported to the authorities that he had accidentally killed his girlfriend during an argument in a bathtub, claiming that she had inhaled water and died following his attempts at resuscitation. He also claimed that she often pretended to be unconscious. Police.
This is 3 for 3, by the way. He has either drowned or attempted to drown all 3 women that have been mentioned in here. For the first 2, it was the point when they left, right? The first 2, for some reason, they were able to leave and he let them leave. Kellyanne did not get that courtesy. She left and he pulled her back in several times. This is the hallmark of this case, because for some reason, he went so much further with Kelly. He went so over the top, and it's really devastating to see, because she didn't get the courtesy of being able to leave. She was a teenager. She was a child. And what he does to her, now that she's been denied access to her family, now that her parents have both received cards for different occasions, not written in their child's handwriting. And you're going to find out why she couldn't write these. Why she couldn't write to them. What happened to her? But I'm going to tell you something right now. She didn't accidentally drown in that bathtub.
Police went to Smith's address and found Bates' naked body in a bedroom. Her blood was found throughout the house, and a post-mortem examination revealed over 150 separate injuries on her body. During the last month of her life, she had been kept bound, sometimes tied by her hair to a radiator or furniture, or by her neck by way of a ligature.
The murder inquiry was headed by Detective Sergeant Joseph Monahan of the Greater Manchester Police, who said, "I have been the police force for 15 years, and I have never seen a case as horrific as this."
He had also, I don't know if they're going to mention it, but I want to mention it. He had also smashed her hands flat. He had broken like every bone in her hands. So those were useless. And then I think that he had also done something to her legs so that she couldn't walk, or she would have trouble walking. And while she was tied to this radiator, um she was also in a pit or a hole of some kind, and with her having, disfigured hands and a hard time walking because of injuries to her legs and feet, she was in a pit. And you're going to see why this would also be bad in a second, because I'm sure that they're going to mention the worst part of it all. And it really is. This is the most disturbing case of DV in all of the UK for a reason.
William Lawler, the home office pathologist who examined her body, said, "In my career, I have examined almost 600 victims of homicide. I have never come across injuries so extensive." The following injuries were found on Bates's body: scalding to her butt and her legs, burns on her thigh caused by the application of a hot iron, a fractured arm, multiple stab wounds caused by knives, forks, and scissors, stab wounds inside her mouth, crush injuries to both hands, mutilation of her ears, nose, eyebrows, mouth, lips, and genitals, wounds caused by a spade and pruning shears. Both eyes had been gouged out by his hands.
Jesus.
There it is. So he had crushed her hands. He had removed her eyes with his fingers. And he had basically gone around the house finding any sharp object or blunt object he could hurt her with. He had burned her thighs with the clothing iron. Not just a hot iron, a clothing iron that you use on clothes. He had used it on her thighs. He wanted to destroy this little girl, and I don't understand why. He saw her, he pursued her. He is the reason that all of this happened. If he didn't like her, didn't enjoy her, I think it wasn't even about that, really, right? It wasn't even about liking her. It was about controlling her to the nth degree. But I just want to reiterate that this is a child, okay? This is a little kid. She's a teenager. She's not an adult. And thanks to this man, she will never be an adult. That will never be something that she will be, ever. And it's all because of this man. And I cannot fathom doing like something like this to somebody. I think probably because you and I, right, we're hearing this, we're horrified because we're normal people. This man is a depraved monster. Something is seriously wrong with him.
Later stab wounds to the empty
Oh
sockets.
my goodness.
Partial
Yep.
scalping.
What I could not find is, and I didn't even see like the later stab wounds to the empty eye socket, and I always forget that he gouged the eyes out. I want to know how much of this is post-mortem, and I couldn't really find
I don't think
an
any of
answer
it
to
was
that.
post-mortem.
Nope, all of this was done while she was still alive. And what's worse is because of how bad the injuries were, they didn't know how early on her eyes had been gouged out. So she could have spent this entire last month of her life with no eyesight. And then he went for her mouth, he went for her ears, He crushed her hands. He was taking away her senses, okay? This girl she couldn't see, she couldn't hear, she couldn't feel around because of her hands. He had stabbed her in the mouth. Like, he was trying to take away her senses and like dehumanize her in every way possible. And that's what this is. That's what he's done. He's succeeded, and it's so disgusting.
Think that he just did this to her in her last month.
Maybe, I mean, when you get both eyes gouged out, obviously you can not die from that. But if you're getting stab wounds to the empty sockets,
Mm-hmm.
Oh God.
like that can send you into shock and kill you.
Yeah, the pathologist determined that her eyes had been removed not less than 5 days and not more than 3 weeks before her death.
Okay.
Yeah, she had been starved, having lost around 45 pounds in weight, and not received water in several days before her death.
Peter Openshaw, the prosecutor in Smith's trial, said, quote,
She hadn't received water in days before her death. And yet the last thing he did, and I can almost hear him saying, "You want water?" And then shoving her head into the tub. I could almost imagine it. I could almost see him doing it. What kind of sick, depraved person does this to somebody? What kind of a monster? To a 17-year-old child.
it was as if he deliberately disfigured her, causing her the utmost pain, distress, and degradation. The injuries were not the result of one sudden eruption of violence. They must have been caused over a long period and were so extensive and so terrible that the defendant must have deliberately and systematically tortured the girl. The cause of death was drowning, immediately prior to which she had been beaten about the head with a shower head. Openshaw said that, quote, her death must have been a merciful end to her torment.
So some sources I've heard, like obviously I'm not a biologist, I don't know these things, and I have both of my eyes, but it's said that the area behind your eyeballs and the eye socket is just full of nerves.
It is.
Yep.
So getting stabbed in there, getting pressed there, water going into it must have been absolutely horrific.
Well, that's what I was saying, what I understand because of those nerve clusters. And again, I don't have a medical background in this, but what I had read is that if you were to take enough force behind the eyes after your eyes were removed, it's likely to send a person into shock. Could potentially kill them. That was my understanding.
I couldn't
anyway.
imagine, just based on the migraines that I have, I couldn't imagine someone playing around back there.
It's a migraine of unimaginable proportions, would be putting it lightly. What hatred and ghastly sadism to go this far with somebody, how much effort that takes, and how you have to push through, obviously, somebody in unimaginable amounts of pain. You try to comprehend just what kind of person that is, and it's just one that is beyond reason.
And I just don't understand how neighbors didn't know this was going on.
Then something else that I can't get. She would have been in so much pain. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't beg for help. She didn't beg for it to stop. She didn't make any noise at all while you were literally mutilating her. She didn't make any sound. No one heard that. No one who shares a wall with this man didn't hear a girl sobbing in pain. They didn't hear her screaming for help. They didn't hear anything. Nothing was reported. No one was called. How? How did you miss that? How did people living near this man not hear any of that? I can't understand. It makes absolutely no sense.
Or hadn't sent a wellness check over.
We've done cases like this before. Junko Furuta, Sylvia Likens.
Ugh.
There's a few things they have in common. But one of the more troubling ones is, why weren't the police called? Why didn't the neighbors care? Obviously, what was going on would have made quite a bit of noise. It's hard to
Right.
muffle
I mean, from
sounds like that.
what I understand, the parents couldn't do anything and neighbors couldn't do anything due to the age gap because 16 is the legal age of consent, even though there
That's another thing that pisses me off. They were like, "Well, it was legal. It was legal, so there's nothing that we can do." There was so many things that you could do. She was still a child. She is not a legal adult. Okay? She was living with a legal adult with a man well over twice her age, and yet you just kind of shrugged and said, "Oh, well, she wants to be with him." No. No. Also, if this was my kid, and I'm not saying that this is on the parents, right? They tried to go about this the only way that they could. Um, and they tried to reach out to the proper authorities, and the authorities did nothing until it was too late. Okay? This is a big issue that we have a lot of with police officers, is that they don't like to prevent crimes, they only punish people after it happens. Well, it cost a 17-year-old your life while you were saying, well, technically it's legal. Technically it is illegal in the state of Kentucky for me to put an ice cream cone in my back pocket because a horse could follow me home and then I could take ownership of it once it was on my property. But I can still do that. I can still put an ice cream cone in my pocket if I wanted to, even though that is legally on the books, right? I could still do that. The likelihood that a horse is going to follow me home is very slim to none. But you know what I mean? Technically it's illegal, but nobody's going to say anything, right? Right? Because it wouldn't make any sense. I don't know if that even made sense. But there's a lot of things that are technically legal and technically illegal that are constantly overlooked. This is the point I was trying to make. And when it comes to a 16-year-old child being involved in a relationship where they live with a 48-year-old man, it feels like you should do more than just shrug and say, "Oh, well, that's a child, okay? That is a child. That is somebody's baby. That is specifically Tommy and Margaret's baby. Tommy and Margaret Bates. That is their baby. And you allowed them to go through watching their daughter being abused up until they couldn't get contact with her at all. They called the police. They did what they could. And it is because of stories like this and Sylvia Likens, who was another one who also lived in the UK and also was tortured to death by their partner. Junko Furtua, I think I'm saying her name right. I'm sorry. Hers is so horrific. I can't stop thinking about it. Or about the Hello Kitty mermaid plushie. If you know that case, you will understand why that is important. If you don't fucking Google it. It will haunt you. Okay? But the reason that these cases are so prevalent and stick with people is because so many things could have been done to prevent it and nothing was done. These cases are so terrible, and you want to assume that if the authorities were alerted to issues like this, they would do something, but it happens so often that they don't. They don't take precautions. And yet we're giving them millions of dollars to not prevent crime. Right? Like, there's no use acting after something happens. You need to act before. If you are being alerted and you are seeing a similar pattern to other patterns that have, guess what, ended in fucking murders, maybe you should try to prevent a murder that you can clearly see on the horizon as a person who has experience, as a person who is a police officer and has experience. That's the only thing that makes sense. But they don't want to do that because they're just like curing disease. There's no money in it. There's also no money in preventing crime, because if you prevent crime, then they don't need millions of your fucking tax dollars, do they? Nope. Because if we were able to prevent crime, there wouldn't be as many cops needed, because we already prevented it. We already prevented the crime. Is that making sense to anybody else? Because it drives me absolutely insane that people don't understand why these things are important.
Was a prior relationship. She was now of age and they couldn't really do anything about her moving out or moving in with him or leaving her job, etc.
Because if it's anything like in America, you can legally drop out of school at the age of 16 of your own accord. So at that point, while she's not a legal adult, she has enough legalities in the space where she can do this and she can't be reported missing and all of this stuff. But if they're hearing sounds of assault going on, something could have been done.
Especially where you have a situation where you have this older man with a flurry of much younger women.
Had he had prior convictions? This is something I couldn't find either.
I couldn't find if he had been convicted prior to this.
He had not been convicted prior. The women had just escaped. The reason I can't find a lot of information, this was in the 80s, right? The late 80s, early 90s, when a lot of his crimes were happening. So there wasn't a lot of recording. They didn't manage to get photos of a lot of this stuff. So, but the thing is he didn't get in trouble. These women just left. They just left of their own accord, and the others, he let them go. Except for the youngest of his victims, who he basically kept for the longest. He met her when she was 14 and started a secret relationship with her, and it continued until her death at 17 years old. So that is 3 years. That is the longest other than his marriage. And in his marriage, it had been it started off with romance. It started off with love bombing until they were married, and then he had control. He was with that woman for 10 years. And once it got bad, she left. He then met a 15-year-old girl and started abusing her. And then Kelly, who was 14. And he met her because she was babysitting his friend's child.
Or if these former lovers had come forward after Kellyanne was killed.
That it could be quite likely that was the case. It's hard to say.
Especially where this is the 80s, they're younger, there's also a child involved. Maybe they just wanted to get out.
Smith denied the murder, claimed Bates, quote, would put me through hell winding me up, end quote. He also claimed that Bates had taunted him about his dead mother and had a bad habit of hurting herself. When asked to explain why he had blinded, stabbed, and battered Bates, he said she had dared him to do it, challenging him to do her harm.
What?
Christ. I only really saw this in high school where...
Hey, you know what? One time my friend dared me to hang upside down and drink a beer. I didn't do it because the physics of that just sounded awful. His thought was that it would go to your brain quicker, and therefore you would get drunk faster. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. It's also not how that works, because you don't need the alcohol to go to your brain. You need it to get to your colon. I swear he was the dumbest person I've ever met. I think it's your colon. Yeah. Because your colon absorbs that stuff pretty fast, which is why you hear a lot about instances like that. But anyway, Yeah, I didn't do it. It didn't make any sense. And also, um, it doesn't go to your brain like that. It doesn't anyway, there was a lot of problems with this logistically, right? But the big thing is that I got dared to do it and I didn't do it. If somebody dared me to kill them, I also wouldn't do it, but I'm a normal person. Also, he says he didn't mean to do it, and then he says, well, she would wind me up. Did you not mean to do it? Or did you not do it? Or were you so angry that you did it out of rage? I need you to get your fucking story straight, buddy.
You know, a girl has screamed at somebody in the hallway, hit me, I know you won't do it, hit me.
It's usually trashier people that do things like that.
But who's gonna be like, yeah, I bet you won't gouge my eyes out? What the fuck? Yeah, I'm sure she dared you to do all that.
No, from all accounts, she was a very happy-go-lucky person.
Yeah, again, compared to the other two cases I mentioned, you have the sweetest, most carefree women falling into just pure evil. Very sad. Gillian Mezzi, I think I said that right.
It's either Gillian or Jillian. It
Yeah,
can go both ways.
yeah, okay. They're British. It's probably Jillian. I think of Jillian from New Order. A consultant psychiatrist told the court that Smith had, quote, a severe paranoid disorder with morbid jealousy and lived in a distorted reality.
The jury at Manchester Crown Court took 1 hour to find 49-year-old Smith guilty of Bates's murder.
That is fast.
That is
if y'all
very
aren't
fast.
familiar with juries, that's fast.
I'm fairly certain they probably already knew what they were going to say, just had to get through the formalities and paperwork out there in their little back room. So, sentencing him to life imprisonment, the judge, Mr. Justice Sachs, recommended that Smith serve a minimum term of 20 years. He stated, "This has been a terrible case, a catalog of depravity by one human being upon another. You are a highly dangerous person. You are an abuser of women, and I intend, so far as it is in my power, that you will abuse no more."
From what I understand, I'm pretty positive at this point in time there was no death penalty in England. I think there hadn't been the death penalty there for quite a long time. For those wondering why was he not given the death penalty for this, this is why. Minimum of 20 years. I don't know the court system there that much. If you can't just give someone life without parole there, I don't know for sure. I mean, you look at Harry Roberts, who killed 3 cops. I don't know many murders over in England, but this is the one that comes to mind, and he was paroled after 50 years or something like that. And over here in America, if you kill a cop, just one cop, good luck getting parole. Good luck.
You're
I don't
probably
think it
going to be
happens.
just put to death if you
Or you
kill a
get
cop.
or you get life. But Harry Roberts killed 3 of them, and from what I understand, was unrepentant and was released as an old man. Finally, he's kind of a legend in
lad culture.
Lad culture, because if cops come into the football club, they'll start chanting, "Harry Roberts is our friend. He kills coppers." There's videos online if you want to see that stuff. But anyways, if somebody's from across the pond and wants to chime in and give us more information about how the justice system works over there in a case like this, because it is kind of weird to not see life without parole, leave us a comment or send us a email, miserymachinepodcast@gmail.com.
This might be our first British true crime case.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That's another thing. I hate looking into crimes from across the pond where they have like standards for living and life and they try to respect the prisoners. In America, we don't do that. We don't do that. We're just kind of like, hey, you committed a crime, so fuck you. It's kind of how it is. And so, I mean, in this case, it seems like he got off relatively lightly for what he did and did to other people because this was a perpetuated cycle. But if you look at crimes also like think of the Oslo bombing and then shooting. It was a terrorist attack perpetuated by one guy who planned it, where he planted a bomb, and when emergency services were overwhelmed dealing with the fallout from that, he took a boat out to a summer camp full of children and proceeded to shoot and kill his way across that island that he was on. He got, I think, like 20 some years, and he's in a Swedish prison, which is basically a fucking apartment. They have TVs, they have desks, they have really nice IKEA furniture, and it's fucked up. It pisses me off to no end. Um, that he's getting treated so well. I feel like if you commit crimes like that, they should send you to America to be in prison because it's the only way you're actually going to get punished. Because over there, the focus of a lot of their prisons and detention centers is rehabilitation. So if you ever hear them talk about the Scandinavian model, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about rehabilitation over punishment. They are trying to get you rehabilitated so that you can be out in public. That is the whole point. It will never cease to piss me off that this is the way things are done. Never.
Yeah, so we should probably do more of that. We'll learn a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, we've done European before, but not, and Eastern European, just not England. That's weird. Anyways, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
We are.
The jury were provided with professional counseling to help them deal with the distress of seeing the photographs of Bates's injuries and sickening violence of the case. One thing that I want to mention is that I saw an interview, this is a little while ago, I saw an interview with Kellyanne Bates' mother, who said that at one point she was in the same room as Smith. I don't know if she was over visiting or if he was with Kelly at their house, but she said there was a point where his back was turned to her and there was a kitchen knife on the table, and she had this overwhelming urge to pick it up and stab him to death. She said she had never felt anything like this in her life, but she had an extreme urge to do it, and she resisted it, but she looks back and realizes that that was the moment she could have saved her daughter's life. And she says she regrets it, even if it would have cost her her life in return for it. And it's just so sad. Nobody
To have that kind of regret, thinking that if I had just done something horrible, I could have saved my child. It's one of those things where it's like, you have this feeling, you have an innate feeling to save people. I don't know if it would have helped. I don't know if it would have done harm. I don't know if it would have, in the event, worked out better in the long run. I do know that if my child ever brought home a grown adult, or I found out that they were communicating with a grown adult in any way while they are a child, guess what? We're moving, okay? I'm not living in the same place as the person trying to make you a victim. We're moving states away, a country away if I have to. To keep you safe, I will move anywhere. I will keep you away from them at all cost. And they may hate me. They may hate me for a while. They may hate me for years afterward. But you know what? In the long run, I kept my child from being a victim, and that's what I would do. I don't care what kind of financial situation I would be put in, and I know that that's hard for some people. But I would do absolutely anything for my child. Anything. And you could not stop me from protecting them, no matter what it took. It would never be a question. I would have moved you to keep you safe, and you could hate me as much as you wanted to. Eventually, you would understand I did it for your own good. This is not something that the parents could have foreseen, but we have cases like this now, and enough of them have built up that we know that it's not going to end well. And I would rather my child think I'm an asshole than become a statistic. Because I don't think I could live with myself if I didn't do anything.
should blame somebody for not killing a person in cold blood like that, but I I really feel for her mother
I really understand the want to.
for having that on her conscience, because while she should hold no blame of her own, I can understand where that guilt would come from regardless. And again, I'm not a parent myself, but I can certainly see the connection there. That was an interesting part of that case that I remember. This is quite a sickening one. Y'all really wanted us to do this.
Perhaps one day when we head to Manchester, we can go check out her gravestone.
Yes. Yeah, Manchester is a place that I do want to visit. Manchester has a lot of history, musically and otherwise, to me.
Definitely.
And it is a place I will visit one day, provided Europe will let Americans travel again. But I'm pretty sure her grave's marked.
Oh yeah, it's very big.
Okay.
It's a pretty good like little memorial. It's not like massive or anything like the Sylvia Likens one, but I got some pictures that we'll put in the YouTube slideshow. We probably should do the Yorkshire Ripper. You can make a whole bunch of New Order references.
Yeah, I can, because Peter Hook was a suspect.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll do more British stuff. But yeah, keep up with the suggestions. There's not a whole lot more to this. Again, the circumstances surrounding it, Smith's life growing up and how he was raised, that stuff I could not find. So anybody that knows anything like that, maybe you know people connected to the case, you have stories, leave us a comment, send us an email.
This didn't happen too long ago. This would have taken place. She would be in her 40s right now, early 40s.
Yeah.
Like I was a freshman in high school when this happened.
I, for some reason in my mind, think that they weren't together for very long. But they were together for 3 years, which isn't a super long time, but...
It's a super long time when you're a 14-year-old girl.
Oh, absolutely it is. But I guess in my mind, when I think of this case, I always think that she was only living with him for a matter of months before he snapped. But it wasn't the case, so you just have to wonder what life was like for her.
During that time.
Yeah, because I'm sure it wasn't wine and roses at any point.
I wonder if there was a period of time where it was. Because you have to think, she's a girl. And by girl, I mean like a teenage girl. She can kind of go back to her parents' house whenever she wants to.
Some people just feel like can't.
Yeah.
I would feel like that maybe he was charming at first, but then as soon as she moved in, that's when things changed.
Yeah, I'm definitely not trying to make it seem like victims of assault don't have regrets about leaving or it's difficult to leave. It is very difficult to leave. I found myself in that situation before as well. Where I find it's more difficult for adults is you have so much invested in your home, possibly kids, animals, job, things of that nature, which make it harder to leave on top of like all the emotional reasons. When you're a teenager, you don't have all of that. You can just up and uproot. So what I'm thinking is there had to been some period of time where he was at least charming to keep her there for that long.
It's possible, but you also have to understand, and I've felt this myself. I've known a lot of people that resign themselves to this, men and women. When you're younger, you think there's no way I can do any better than this.
I can understand that.
You don't know what else is out there, and even in the age of social media, it was hard to feel like I had other options. I could go elsewhere. You really
We accept the love we think we deserve. That's what he's talking about, which makes a lot of sense, right? When you're a teenager, I mean, I have seen teenagers in bad relationships before. But the thing is if people are warning them, they want to prove them wrong. That was a whole mentality I saw so many people go through. But this poor child, it just feels like she was let down at every turn by the authorities and like the community she was in. There just wasn't a lot that they could do. And with these DV situations, especially if you watch like body cams, right? A number one thing that you'll hear cops say is, well, I've been here before. I've been here so many times. He does this a lot. He does this a lot. And they're like, I don't know why she keeps going back or why she keeps letting him come home. And it's like, because that's their home that they share. They probably have kids. They probably share bills. They probably have joint bank accounts, or they've signed on each other's property. People, especially adults, they tie so much of their lives to their partners, right? My husband co-signed for me to get my car, and I am on his insurance. He is the second on our rental agreement for our townhouse. If for some reason we were to get a divorce, the amount of things that we would have to unravel from each other is so much. And so Kelly lived with this man, okay? that was her home. And a big thing, and they didn't bring it up, is the fight that she had with her mother before she moved out. Her mom told her that if she wanted to go, she needed to go. Of course, her mom tried to take it back, but by then Kelly had left and or was in the process of leaving, had all of her stuff together. She probably thought she couldn't go home. She probably thought she couldn't go home. And once again, her mom did try to take it back, but because of that fight, it was probably why she stayed longer than she definitely should have. But this was shortly before anything happened. But at first, Kelly was allowed to talk to them on the phone. She was allowed to visit them and things like that. But at that point, he was abusing her in a way where you couldn't see bruises. It wasn't until she was about to leave that her mother saw, I think she had like a burn on her face or a black eye, something like that, where she had freaked out and then begged her to stay, and she wouldn't stay. She left. And that was, I think, one of the last times that they saw her, when she was still like so she was like living in his house and also in her parents' house. She was going back and forth. And Kelly, she didn't deserve any of this, the poor thing. She just didn't deserve it. It's so horrific. It makes me hurt all over to think that this poor child went through this. And what her last experience on her last month on Earth must have been like.
You feel like it's this or nothing.
She might have thought she had it good because you have this like older man who, by their accounts, is good looking. I didn't find him good looking in the pictures I found, but...
And I don't know what the culture is for Manchester at the period of time, but I can tell you from a small town perspective, a country small town perspective, which I admit is radically different than Manchester. But back then, and even to an extent when I was in school, they would push girls to marry older men to ensure that they would be taken care of, because chances are these men already had stable jobs and their lives were together. And a lot of people coming from poverty just want to see their children taken care of. So
this is something that you see a lot, especially where I'm from. It's like, you should get with that guy who's got a good job. He's got money. When I was a kid, it was men who worked in the mines. As an adult, it was men who worked on the pipelines. Truck drivers. These are the kinds of jobs that paid a lot of money. I don't know if they do anymore. I don't think so. But these are the kinds of jobs where you could support a family. So your daughter or son would be taken care of, basically. Mostly your daughter. They would be taken care of, right? So they wouldn't have to get a job. They wouldn't have to work. They wouldn't have to struggle because they had a partner who could provide. This is a big thing. This is still something that I hear to this day. And it's really weird, but it is very prevalent. Especially in the South where I'm from, where poverty is still such a big thing. Even today, especially today, like, our entire state is like third world level poverty. You know what I mean? So this happens a lot. And people encourage it because they think it's a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's a weird thing, but that's what they think.
Could be very well the case.
Yeah,
she probably thought that she hit it big with this older man who had a nice house. I mean, they said he was house proud. I'm assuming he had a decent house.
Yeah, I'm assuming he had some money and he had kept his house and his things looking very nice. That's the only thing I can think of. He didn't seem like a slob by any stretch, but he certainly was a psychopath. It's really sad when you see cases like this because you can connect the cultural mores to these things in different ways. Like we just did with how they would marry younger girls off to older men just to make sure they were taken care of, and you just wonder what was different culturally. It's really easy to look back in times like this with the cultural lens that we have now in 2020. I'm sure some of you were like, well, she could have just left. She had all these things. Like, why didn't people intervene? But even though 30 years ago, well, 25 years ago, I keep the 90s, so I keep forgetting how it gets further and further away from us. Even though it's that many years ago, which isn't that long, all things considered, culturally things were quite different. And there were certain societal pressures and standards in place. And again, I can't speak for Manchester, but I knew how things were growing up, things I saw, things I heard, the stories that people told me. And I can't help but wonder if any of those things were similar for Kellyanne Bates. But that's all I got.
That's all I've got.
All right, well, if you're listening on YouTube, please.
That was a lot. This case is a lot. It's overwhelming. There's a reason that it is mentioned so heavily. If you ever Googled the worst case of domestic violence in the UK, it's either going to be Kelly or Sylvia. Both of them were victims of extreme domestic violence before their deaths. And it's really disturbing. I just watched a young lady, Danielle Kirsty, I think is how you say her last name. She's UK based. She covered it recently on her channel. She's very good. I would suggest go checking her out. I will put her the link to this video and to also Daniel's video in the description below. So, oh, I need to move on from this.